Other Trump critics are using much harsher words to describe his maneuvers. U.S. House Democrat Tulsi Gabbard tweeted, "Hey, Trump, being Saudi Arabia's B word is not America first."
And the former CIA director basically called him a sellout.
I think the danger here is that, the president may talk about America first, but essentially what he's saying is America is for sale to the highest bidder.
And the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, a Republican, tweeted, quote, "I never thought I'd see the day a White House would moonlight as a public relations firm for the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia."
And the publisher of the Washington Post writes, "A clear and dangerous message has been sent to tyrants around the world. Flash enough money in front of the president and you can literally get away with murder." Well, our next guest also writes for the Washington Post, and in his latest piece warns democracy is in crisis worldwide. Global affairs analyst Max Boot comes to us from CNN New York. Good to have you with us, Max.
Good to be here.
I want to start first with your tweet, and you wrote that Donald Trump is tougher on Admiral Bill McRaven than he is on Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman or Vladimir Putin or Kim Jong-un. Max, what is going on with the world right now? The U.S. president attacking a Navy SEAL and a 4-star general over his handling of Osama bin Laden while giving a free pass to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia over the assassination of a journalist.
Well, what this indicates is the lack of moral compass that Donald Trump has. He views everything in purely personal terms. And of course, MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and his father, the king, rolled out the red carpet for Donald Trump in 2017 and have never criticized him. And so therefore, he likes them. Whereas, on the other hand, Admiral Bill McRaven has criticized Donald Trump. So the fact that he's a war hero doesn't cut any mustard with Trump. This is just an intensely solipsistic president who views everything in his own relation to himself, not in terms of what's actually in the interests of the country.
It's incredibly simplistic when you think about it. I mean, the thing with the Saudis, and, They murdered and then dismembered a man who lives in America, writes for the Washington Post. It would seem that the MBS is going to get a free pass no matter what the CIA says about him likely being responsible. It's like, what does this do to American values? Because he says America first. America first doesn't represent this, does it? Is it America first or is it Trump first?
Well, that's a great question. I think there is a case to be made for Trump first because he clearly likes the Saudis. He's bragged about how much money that he's made from the Saudis who have bought his apartments. And of course, he tried to put forward the case in his bizarre, rambling statement about why it's in our interest to basically kowtow to Saudi Arabia. But he doesn't really understand what's going on here, which is that the Saudis need America much more than America needs the Saudis. We provide them protection. They would not exist without us. And in fact, he said that a few months ago, that the Saudi royal family would be off the throne within 2 weeks without American protection. That's a slight exaggeration, but there's an element of truth there. But now he's reversing the power equation to make it seem like we can't offend the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia because they buy American weapons. Of course, he vastly exaggerates the amount of American weapons that they buy. Or we can't offend the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia because they're standing up to Iran, but they're not standing up to Iran as a favor to us. It's in their own self-interest. Likewise, they're not dropping oil prices as a favor to America. That was a miscalculation on the part of OPEC. So he doesn't have an understanding of American interests.
Because the American sanctions were meant to stop Iranian oil sales, so that impacted what the Saudis were doing. And then, of course, Donald Trump made those exceptions to the sanctions, which meant there was going to be more Iranian oil on the market, which messed up the market as well. But you're right, it wasn't him who did it. Sorry. Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. I just want to reference the piece you wrote for the Washington Post, because you said that Donald Trump has given every despot on the planet a license to kill, and that does echo what we are seeing from the publisher and chief executive of the Washington Post, Fred Ryan, who is a long time Republican. He worked as an assistant to Ronald Reagan. And as we mentioned earlier, he said it sends a clear and dangerous message to tyrants around the world. Flash enough money in front of the President of the United States, and you can literally get away with murder. And we saw today the Saudi foreign minister quoting President Trump and using the fact that he's undermining U.S. intelligence and to his advantage.
Yeah, it sends a terrible message to the entire world, which says that we will not stand up for our values, that you can murder somebody who writes for an American newspaper and get away with it if you buy some arms from America. That is not what this country is about. Donald Trump does not understand the meaning of soft power. He doesn't really understand why America has become the most powerful country in the world. It's not just because we have a big economy or a large military. It's because we have stood up for values that a lot of people around the world have cherished. And most American presidents before him, including Ronald Reagan, have understood that, have stood up for those values. But Donald Trump is a value-free zone. He does not stand up for those American values. And it's very, very troubling to see the way that he is selling out American values in order to curry favor with the Saudi royal family.
The other thing that's confounding is it's not a zero-sum game. It's not like give a pass to MBS or go to war with Saudi Arabia. I mean, there is some middle ground that he could take, but he's sort of portraying it in that way. Your piece in the Washington Post today, too, also, I mean, it centers around democracy being under siege, but in the US, but around the world as well. And you do list many reasons for that, from immigration to refugees and other things. But there are other factors. But how much do the president's comments undermine the institutions of democracy in the United States, and how does that then flow on to other countries?
I think it sends a terrible message because it's of a piece with Donald Trump calling the press the enemy of the people. And in fact, in his statement, he quoted the Saudis as describing Jamal Khashoggi as being an enemy of the state, and he seems to give that some credence. So the basic message that's coming out of Washington is the United States no longer cares about press freedom, which is why you see despots around the world who are locking up journalists who are citing Donald Trump's words, who are using his very phrase, enemy of the people, as an excuse to crack down on journalists. And again, for decades, literally for many decades, the United States has stood up and championed free speech, free press. Those are the values we have fought for, and we have ceased fighting for those values under Donald Trump.
Yeah, that was more smear than statement, talking about enemy of the people.
It's
enemy of the state. Because there is zero evidence that he was anything remotely like that.
He was a critic. He was dismembered, killed and dismembered for criticizing the government of Saudi Arabia. This is an unconscionable crime, and Donald Trump doesn't seem to care. I mean, just imagine how he would react if the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia had insulted Donald Trump. He would be livid. He would fly off the handle. But dismembering a journalist, who cares? That's basically the message that's coming from the administration.
Yeah,
exactly.
The enemy of the state, just repeating the Saudi narrative there, and then saying, but oh, I didn't use that to make my decision anyway. Got to leave it there, Max. So always a pleasure to see you, Max Boot.
Thanks, Max.
Thank you.